Regeneration is one of the most exciting but also scary parts of Doctor Who. You know, there's an undeniable buzz in the air whenever a new Doctor is incoming, but there is also that feeling of sadness as we prepare to say goodbye to an incarnation that we've just spent the last few years getting to know and love. Now, there's also that inevitable post-regeneration period where you're not quite sure about the new Doctor, and you kind of wish that the old one would just come back. But then, when it comes time for the current Doctor to regenerate, you're wishing that they would never leave either. It's a process we've been through time and time again, but the actual concept of regeneration is actually something that we still don't know that much about. We know that it's a survival mechanism that kicks in when a Time Lord is on the brink of death, but it's not always clear why a particular face gets chosen, if the Time Lords have any control over this, or if it's all just completely random and you're just stuck with what you get. Now, the 11th Doctor being annoyed to find out that he still wasn't ginger would seem to suggest that the Doctor can't pick and choose their next characteristics. But then other episodes have shown us that regeneration can indeed be influenced, at least passively, like the 12th Doctor, for example, having that frowny face, which is inadvertently taken from Caecilius as a reminder for the Doctor that his mission is to save as many lives as he can.
Doctor, what's wrong with your face?
I think I know why I chose it.
But what if there's something else that passively influences regeneration? Again, with Caecilius, we've seen that the people the Doctor meets can have an impact on their future faces. So surely the people closest to the Doctor, that being their companions, would have an impact as well. Now, I really love this theory, and I do think it's perfect, and it actually has a lot more merit than you might think, so let's dive into it.
Except it means I'm gonna change.
So when Doctor Who returned in 2005, it did so with a Doctor who was battle-scarred and alone. Though not shown on screen, we then learned that there was a huge war between the Daleks and the Time Lords, and that the Doctor had ended this war by destroying both sides. Now, of course, that's an insane amount of baggage for anyone to carry, even a superpowered alien with 2 hearts and the power to cheat death. And so a large part of that first series was the 9th Doctor being healed by Rose, learning to love again, learning to hope again. And he goes from being quite angry and vengeful to literally dancing around the TARDIS by the end of episode 10. And actually, while we're here, can we please have more dance scenes inside the TARDIS? You know, there's a literal jukebox there now and disco lights built into the walls, so there really is no excuse to not have some more dancing. Just saying. But basically, to put it another way, Rose turns the War Doctor back into just the Doctor. And so when the time came for 9 to regenerate, he did so under the influence of Rose, and under the influence of her humanity. And let's not forget, there was even a flicker of romance between them after they shared a kiss in the series finale, The Parting of the Ways. Now, okay, sure, this didn't really mean anything, considering that it was just the Doctor's way of saving Rose's life, but it then does become very important when you look at what happened next. And what happened next was the 9th Doctor regenerated into the 10th Doctor. He became younger and arguably better looking. He became more cheerful and outgoing, more human, and crucially, he became more romantic. I mean, Russell T Davies literally cast Casanova as the Doctor. Doesn't really get more romantic than that, does it? So if we're going by this theory that companions influence the Doctor's regenerations, all of these stark changes that the Doctor went through from 9 into 10 were a direct result of the 9th Doctor's time spent with Rose. His regeneration made him more like her, even down to that similar estuary English accent. He became more carefree and spirited and acted a lot more like a human. He also embraced love and romance way more, which could have been a lingering effect of that kiss that 9 and Rose shared, and then the Doctor's growing desire to be with her. Now, that's not to say that the 10th Doctor didn't retain some of the darkness of the 9th Doctor, because he absolutely did, and this came to the forefront towards the end of his life with the Time Lord victorious. 10 being a more human incarnation had also made him more easily corruptible, and this is one of the factors that shaped his regeneration then into 11.
And there's no one to stop you.
No.
So after breaking the laws of time by saving the doomed Bowie Base 1 crew members in the waters of Mars, the 10th Doctor then does acknowledge that he's gone too far. Then, in the end of time, he accepts that it's time for him to die, albeit after throwing a massive hissy fit about it. And though he isn't best pleased about the situation, he then regenerates into a new incarnation. Now, this incarnation was goofier, more alien, more socially awkward, and a lot less human. The 10th Doctor's regeneration, quote-unquote, fixed his biggest flaw, making him less emotional and therefore less volatile. It's really cool to think that regeneration is this kind of smart and self-aware process and can correct or change things based on what it sees from each incarnation. Now, as far as 10's companions influencing the 11th Doctor, well, look no further than Donna Noble. Donna was loud, cheeky, and not afraid to speak her mind, even when she probably shouldn't. And seriously, how many times did 11 get himself into hot water just by saying the wrong thing? There are definite shades of Donna's sassy attitude within him, although this manifested maybe in a more innocent way. An even bigger factor was Donna's reluctance to form any sort of romantic bond with the 10th Doctor, and vice versa. 10 had discovered that getting romantically entangled with his companions perhaps wasn't the best idea. And so if regenerations learn from what they see, then 10's regeneration gave 11 a mates-only attitude, at least initially. Hell, it actually overcooked that characteristic, didn't it, when you think about it, to the point that 11 can't even tell what Amy is trying to do at the end of Flesh and Stone.
About who I want. You know what I mean?
And I know what you're thinking, Ellie, River! But even River's advancements took a while for him to fully understand and embrace. Now, so far, there have been quite deep and meaningful ways that companions have influenced the Doctor's regenerations. But it can also be much simpler than that. So the 11th Doctor had 2 companions, but Amy Pond was obviously the one that he had the most special bond with. You know, she was the first face that his face saw. And so important was their connection that he even hallucinated her during his regeneration, almost using his memories of her to give him the strength to move on. So it's fitting then that the 12th Doctor was very, very Scottish, exactly like Amy was. Again, this isn't necessarily as deep or as meaningful as the previous 2 regenerations, but Amy had such a massive impact on the 11th Doctor's life that it's actually really sweet that he sort of took a piece of her with him.
Good night.
Now the thing is, if the Doctor is aware of this influence, then maybe he was actually trying to manifest the ginger hair. You notice how he does love a ginger companion? But it backfired and took the Scottish element instead. Maybe next time, Doctor. So this theory becomes more difficult to pin down with the 12th Doctor's regeneration, because it's clear in this case that it's the circumstances that affect his change into the 13th Doctor, and not any of his companions. You know, the 12th Doctor didn't even want to regenerate, and felt like he'd given all he could. And after finally reconciling with this and accepting that he needs to change, he becomes less world-weary, more bubbly, and younger. Kind of a similar transition to what the 9th Doctor went through, with both Doctors shedding their trauma to reveal a more outgoing Doctor underneath. By the time of the 13th Doctor's regeneration, however, we see the companions having that influence once again. 13's companions were her family, literally to the point that she consistently referred to them as her fam. And like a family, it was also a larger group, with 13 travelling with 3 companions for the majority of her run, which is by far the largest regular TARDIS team of the modern era. And so, after saying goodbye to her family, what happens with the very next incarnation? We get a Doctor whose whole purpose is to seek out his family and settle down. Donna Noble explains this to the 14th Doctor in The Giggle. She literally says that his current face is a reminder to come home. But 13 forming and then losing her own little family could have easily influenced this just as much as 10's returning face did. Now, elements of this theory can even be worked into the classic series as well. The 2nd Doctor was younger than the 1st due to spending his final days with the young couple, Ben and Polly. He was also a lot more affable, because he had to get Ben and Polly on his side and convince them that he was still the Doctor. And then the 3rd Doctor was a more commanding action hero, which could be a result of the 2nd Doctor spending time with UNIT and the military man Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, who would then go on to be the Doctor's great friend in his 3rd incarnation. Now at this stage you might be going, come on Ellie, this is ridiculous, it's all completely random. But here's what's interesting. This theory actually came close to being confirmed within the show itself. Remember when we mentioned that the 10th Doctor adopted a similar accent to Rose? Well, in the Christmas Invasion, it was going to be established that this was because of Rose, and that the Doctor had essentially imprinted on her like a chick hatching from an egg. But this dialogue was then cut during editing. So for the 10th Doctor and Rose at least, we can say that this theory was actually something that Russell T Davies thought about, and may well be something that other writers and showrunners have also thought about too. Particularly the likes of Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall, who are lifelong fans of the show and would even have the knowledge to consider details like this. Now, what I like about this theory is that it actually makes the companions so much more than just strays, to call them what Idris calls them. They help the Doctor grow and change and become the best version of their next incarnation that they can possibly be. And I mean, it wouldn't even be that unusual. In real life, people change when they spend time with other people. You might start listening to different kinds of music or picking up certain sayings. In fact, do you know how many times I find myself saying, "It'll be grand," and then curse Mr. Sean Ferrick for putting that phrase in my vocabulary? It's just that in the Doctor's case that these changes are maybe more extreme and more explosive. It certainly gives the Doctor's sentiment in Amy's choice that "I choose my friends with great care" a whole other level of meaning. I mean, you gotta choose the good ones because the bad ones could turn you into a bad un. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about all this? I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if you can work this theory into some of the other regenerations that I didn't mention here. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for WhoCulture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.